Okay, welcome everybody to our first backtesting session. In this series, I'm going to be backtesting all of the pairs that we're going to be looking at with this higher time frame model, showing you what it's like to put all of these criteria together for each and every trade plan, and to make sure that we execute upon these rules consistently. These videos is ultimately, and the series is going to deliver you and hand feed you a done for you model that's already profitable and exactly how you need to execute upon it to make it profitable. So in this series, we're going to backtest all the different pairs from the 1st of January to current date, beginning of October 2024, in a series of about 7 to 10 different videos, depending on the amount of pairs that we cover. So starting off, I'm going to be using FX Replay, which is a backtesting tool where you can simulate live trading conditions. So our pairs, we'll start off with EURUSD, one of our OG pairs, and we'll work our way from that, from the 1st of January to current date, using our 4-hour model. Once we go and launch this, one thing I really like about FX Replay is that you cannot cheat yourself out of backtests. If there's a misentry, if there's a loss, or if there's a win, there's no going back. It simulates real trading conditions, which teaches you your discipline. Okay, so I'm going to go and place all of our criteria on the chart over here. And let's go and get started. So first criteria is we're looking for a break of structure, and was that created by a liquidity sweep? Okay. So fast forwarding price, we had this internal break to the downside. Right, break, pullback, break, strong low, pullback, break to the downside. Was this high created after a sweep? Yes, it was. Okay, so now we need to see this internal pullback, which happened here. So now if I take my fib from this high to this low, we need to ask ourselves, is there an order block above the 702? Well, this is already mitigated. There is potentially this zone here, which has not been, it's an equilibrium zone, which if we refine to the 50% is unmitigated. So yes, we do. Do we have volume in the leg? We have volume starting really here. So there is volume in the leg. So yes, valid volume, order block, sweep, break. Our fib is in place. Do we have liquidity? Yes, we do. So we can then immediately wait for price to pull back, and we can set our limits. Okay, nothing yet. Okay, so here we had a valid break to the upside. Okay, we can look, was the strong low that created the break created by a sweep? Well, we had a sweep here, and we had a sweep here. So therefore, for now, this would be a valid long setup. Well, if our criteria print, we have a break, a strong low that was created after a sweep. Do we have an order block? Well, if we take our fib from that low to the high, we need to look for an order block below the 702. We have a valid wick zone with liquidity as well. So let's wait for this pullback. There we go. So this is now valid because this low was the low that initiated the break of the previous high after a liquidity sweep. So we can place our limits on the 702 to risk to reward, 1% risk, and then our refined entry on our order block to risk to reward. And let's see what happens. Okay, so this fib just needs to be adjusted here. We need to readjust our original limit. Entry at the 702 and to risk to reward. Okay, so let's see. We tapped in and we tapped out of the order block. So there's a 2% gain. And we stopped out on the 702 position. So that means we got our 1% gain of our initial position here, well, 2% gain, 1% risk. 2 are on the order block, so we come out with a 1 risk to reward on this trade. So we can move this to the side, remove the setup, and keep following through our next criteria. So what we can do here is we can document this as a win minus 1% on the fib position and plus 2% on the OB, order block position, which equals 1 RR slash 1% return. Okay, so whenever you backtest, I recommend just like leave a little note on each and every trade. So if you want to review that backtesting session, you can just come back and view your notes. But let's follow through with our next trade plan based on our criteria that prints, and we'll check off that list as we go. Okay, so let's have a look. So let's continue. So here we have a new break of structure to the downside. Okay, I'm just going to remove this old fib and the old zone. We'll keep our position here. We'll leave that there. We need to wait and see for that pullback phase because we did have this high created after a liquidity sweep. Okay, so let's wait for the pullback. There we go. We can pull our fib from that high to the low. And we do have also internally this internal break to the upside after a liquidity sweep. So we could, before we get into the shorts, try and ride these longs, the pullback longs, the counter trend reversal. As long as it matches our criteria, it's valid. So for now, I'm going to put this just fib aside here so it doesn't get too confusing. But here we had a valid sweep and then a break of structure to the downside. Okay, break, pullback, break, strong high broken to the upside after a liquidity sweep. So therefore, let's wait for this pullback right there. So now we can go from this low to this high. And we need to ask ourselves, do we have the sweep? Yes. Do we have the break? Yes. So 2 points in check. Do we have an order block? Yes. Do we have volume? Yes, we do. Do we have liquidity? Not yet. Okay, so because this order block is an equilibrium zone, we can refine this to the 50%, which now does put it below the 702, so we do have a valid order block. We can set our limits. Okay, and the refined entry on our order block zone, which also would be 2 risk to reward. So let's see what happens. Okay, we've tapped into our fib position and our order block position. We've hit TP on the order block, so even if we do get stopped out, we come away with one risk to reward, which will be a 1% gain. And we're out on that or on the fib position as well. So therefore, this was a valid win plus 2 RR on the OB and plus 2 RR on the fib. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this aside just like that. I'm not going to let's move that there. And we'll just put this aside here like that. And we can leave that there as a win. Okay, so for our next setup from this low to the high, we have our valid fib position. Let's see if we can get to our fib up here. More liquidity building. So we have valid liquidity as well. More liquidity, and then a break to the downside. Okay, so therefore we now have a new internal range to work with. And this reversal over here to the downside kind of happened middle of nowhere. We can call that an MNR. It didn't come off any fib or any previous setup, so therefore this becomes a new high. We might see two things here, but what I'm about to tell you is going to help you with your future decision making. So because this was a middle of nowhere reversal, yes, we do see the sweep here. Let me just quickly remove this 05. We do see the sweep of liquidity. We do see this break of structure to the downside. Okay, so yes, this could be a medium probability internal setup if our criteria meets. So therefore, I'm happy to go half risk on this, but we could understand this could become liquidity for the more extreme swing setup that is already printed. So therefore, yes, this will be valid, but we understand that it's going to be lower probability because this becomes liquidity for the swing setup. And often what happens in this scenario is price will pull back, sweep this initial setup into the higher probability swing setup and run from there. That's why we call this a middle of nowhere reversal, just to help you in your decision making for future trades based on your criteria. So what we can do is we can try a short right here, but definitely a half risk position. So let's wait for this pullback. Okay, so there we go. We can now take our fib from this high to this low. Okay, we use our rules. Yes, we have a sweep, we have a break, we have an order block, valid wick zone here. It has inefficiency and it has a volume. So therefore we can place our limits. I'm happy to put the entry on the fib, 0.5% risk, and then entry on the refined order block. At 0.5% risk. So let's see what happens. We're in and we're out of that. Okay, so that's fine. So that's where we see the medium probability setup. We often understand with middle of nowhere reversals will come in the form as liquidity for the higher probability swing setup in this scenario. Okay, so what we can do here now is we can set up our fib and our extreme 702 on the swing setup. And our refined order block is actually this entire zone here, but we need to see, is this mitigated at the 50%? Let's just enable the 50 on our fib. 50, I think that is mitigated. Yeah, that's already mitigated at the 50%, so therefore this becomes our valid wick zone, or our valid candle zone, which is also just above the fib, which is valid, and this would be a 2 risk to reward. Okay, so we can place that order, see if we get tapped in. I'm just going to quickly clean up the charts here. And not yet. New break to the downside. Okay, so again, here we had a new middle of nowhere reversal. So therefore, these become invalid for now. Well, not invalid, but we can come back to them in the future. But here as well, we had a sweep. Okay, and we had a new break to the downside. In the future, we know that this could be also become liquidity for the higher time frame. Well, not the higher time frame, but the higher probability swing setup over here. So we can keep this fib on the swing setup here for now, but we can keep following our internal structure and look for internal trades if our criteria meet. Okay, so therefore it is valid again to look for a new setup with this internal range. All right, our sweep of liquidity, our break of structure. What we need to see is our pullback. So let's wait for our pullback. There we go. So we can draw our fib from our low to that high. So what we can do is we can place our 702 limit order, 2 risk to reward, and our refined zone can be this candle here, refined to the 50%. Okay. Because it is a valid equilibrium zone. Okay. So let's follow through price. See if we get to our 702 entry. Okay, so here we have more liquidity forming. We can put this as LQ plus, which is good. So this is a 6 criteria trade plan busy forming, where we can risk our full 1% per position. We can set our limit on the refined order block at 1% risk. Okay, let's follow through price. Okay, new sweep of the lows, new pullback, more liquidity busy creating. So again, we can just adjust our limits as we adjust our fib. 1% risk. Okay, and here as well, this order block here, if we refine this to the 50%, okay, it now pretty much lines up exactly with the 702 fib. So what do you do in this scenario? Well, in this scenario, it is valid to take a 702 entry off the fib as well and move your limit to that, instead of the refined order block, to the recent order block that also holds the double top liquidity right here. Okay, and because it's in line with the 702 and not below, it's 100% valid to do that, because this order block also has our liquidity criteria and this order block as well. So therefore we can set a limit on the recent, but remember our stop loss also covers the extreme. So this is 100% valid. I just want to make sure that my positions are placed here. Place order 1%, place order 1%. Okay, so just to recap this, we have a sweep of liquidity, a break of structure, check, check. An order block, we have two. One that lines up exactly with the 702 and an extreme as well. Both have our liquidity criteria. So therefore the recent is valid. So therefore, check, order block. We do have volume in the leg, check. Fib is set, check. We do have liquidity plus. So therefore we can all set to go. Let's see. Okay, so there we go. We've now tagged into both positions, into our order block, which we actually hit. The refined wick position is over here as well, which should have been 100% valid to go for as well. But in this scenario, we just refined this equilibrium candle to the 50%, which lined up with the 702. Okay, in and out. Okay, beautiful guys. So TP hit. Okay, so I'm just going to tag a little text box here, and we can go win plus 2RR on the OB and plus 2RR on the fib position. Okay, so as long as you guys see when it gets a little bit complex, if we have two zones, as long as if you want to go with the recent, it's 100% valid, but use your liquidity plus criteria. If there's no liquidity for the recent, we know that this high is then going to be used as liquidity for the extreme. Okay, so that's why I was happy to go for the recent, because we had beautiful double top liquidity resting below the recent, which we also refined and wicked into that wick zone. Okay guys, so on to the next plan. I'm just going to clean all of this up. We can leave this here actually, but I'm going to remove the fib and the zones. And we'll just leave that up top there. In terms of an account challenge, already just from the month of January, 1st of Jan to 1st of Feb, you would have passed a phase 1 challenge just on EURUSD, because remember, we're also executing on other pairs as well. So it shows you don't need to be on the lower timeframes to be passing challenges quickly. The higher timeframe with your criteria is going to provide you that just as well and just as quick, because here is our 8% target on if we simulating a phase 1 challenge. So let's play price a little bit further more, see what we get. Okay, new breaker structure to the downside. Price created this swing break of structure to the downside and also swept this high liquidity over here. Okay, so I'm going to play price forward just to see if we get that pullback. Okay, so now we can take our fib, draw that from the high to the low. And also something interesting over here, if you want to ride these pullback longs after these breaks of structures to the downside, it is valid as long as your criteria meet. So over here, we had a sweep of liquidity to the downside. We then had an internal break to the upside. So therefore, we follow our criteria. Do we have volume? No, we don't. There's no volume in the leg. It's all been closed up. Let's see if volume is created. Okay, so now we do have volume in the leg. A little bit of volume, but nothing convincing. We do have liquidity as well. So yes, we have volume, we have liquidity, and we just need to wait for our pullback. Okay, there's that pullback phase. So we can go from this high to the low. Okay, I see that's already tapped, and this would be our refined order block, which we can refine to the 50%. So therefore, we can enter this, but half risk position, because it is a reversal and there is volume, but very little. It's not a high probability setup, so we go half risk, but it is valid. Also, we understand that price is due for the pullback phase. And then our entry on our fib over here, half risk position. To risk to reward, half a risk. Let's see what we get. Okay, so that would have hit TP. But because we missed that entry now, we didn't record that on the results. So this would have been plus $1,000 and another win. But because that wasn't recorded on FX Replay, we'll just record that manually so we can remove these limits because that did hit TP. A little bit irritating when price does that, but yeah, it might happen. Excuse me, because remember, in real time, this candle is moving slowly. You have time to set up now. This was just one move down because of the natural replay, the speed of the replay of price. So what we'll do is here, we'll go win plus 2RR on fib. OB was a miss. Okay, so therefore this was plus 2RR slash 1% return because it was a half risk position. So yeah, we'll keep that there and we'll just recap all of our trades at the end of this backtesting session and update these results to what it truly is. Okay, so I'm going to remove everything here. I'm still interested in the swing setup, so let's see what happens. Okay, so let's keep following through price. Okay, and then we have a new break to the downside. So we'll put this aside for now. We'll label this as a new break. I just want to quickly keep this position here. So when we recap now, this fib position here, we just make sure we have all of our trades on the charts to record our data. There we go. Okay, so new break to the downside. Also a middle of nowhere reversal. But we did sweep internal liquidity before this break of structure to the downside. Okay, so again, this is a middle of nowhere reversal. And as we spoke about earlier, MNR, there is going to be very good probability that this high is going to become liquidity for the overall swing setup because this reversed in the middle of nowhere. Yes, it did sweep internal liquidity, but it didn't sweep any previous high liquidity, convincing high liquidity. So therefore, it's a medium probability setup. So if we want to take it, we can, but we half risk, even if our criteria meet, purely because we know this is now liquidity for the extreme setup. Just as we spoke about with this high over here. Okay, we had the sweep, the break. It was a medium probability setup because this was a middle of nowhere reversal that turned around in the middle of nowhere of this range. So therefore, it used this high as liquidity for the previous swing setup. So we can actually add to our criteria here. 7, is it a middle of nowhere reversal setup? Okay, because middle of nowhere reversal setups we know is, in brackets, lower probability. So we can keep that on our list, because it's very important, as that is a part of our rules, that we see that often. When we see a higher time frame swing setup, that pullback, a lower time frame setup and sweep and break, that this high is going to become liquidity, or good probability, not guaranteed, but good probability it will become liquidity for the higher swing setup. So therefore, we can add that and just keep a note of that in our criteria list. Okay, so if we fast forward price, because we know now we have liquidity for the extreme setup, we can set our limits here. Okay, our 2 risk to reward, 1% risk, our usual, because we have all of our criteria set up, and our refined order block entry which we can take our 2 risk to reward from as well. And we can set those limits. So let's keep playing price and see what happens. There's a good chance we're going to sweep this high. Let's have a look. See, building up more liquidity. And even if you did take the setup, this would have been your setup like this. Your refined order block would have been this wick to the 50% because it's so big. And you most likely would have squeezed out 2 risk to reward from here. Yeah. So you would have had your 2R anyway. It was 100% valid, but for me, this is definitely liquidity for the more extreme setup. Good probability will react, create more liquidity, and mitigate the extreme. But even though our criteria met here, we still get a nice reaction and would have secured some profit. Okay, so there we go. There's that sweep. Did we tag in there? No, we didn't. Okay, let's keep waiting. Okay, so there we go. We've now tagged in our 702 and our fib entry. And we've hit TP. TP on the order block. So beautiful scenario of what price likes to do with middle of nowhere reversals and how we use that as liquidity. Okay, let's keep following through. And while this is busy going, I just quickly want to mention this is a very important backtesting session and video because you're going to be learning new things as well. I'm delivering you new messages, new criteria that is so important at how to actually see it and apply it and let it become a part of you, muscle memory. Because once you have this, this is a skill and a criteria that's going to keep you profitable for forever, for as long as you trade. Okay, so let's keep following this through and see how this goes. Okay, then we shifted bullish, break of structure to the upside and stop loss on our fib position. 100% beautiful. We come out with 1% return, total of 1 risk to reward. Okay, so let's just clean up these charts. I'm going to leave just this here and this we can leave here. And we can make a note. Copy this. Win plus 2RR, 1% on order block. And the fib was loss. Okay. So really nice. We're now currently, as of, let's say 3 months into this account, we're 9% up on just EURUSD alone. Because remember, when we're trading in this period, we're not only trading EURUSD, we're going to have other results coming in from other accounts as well. So what we'll do at the end of the series is look at the overall results as a whole. Now also between this week of waiting for price action to either stop you out or run, a lot of price action has updated here. So we've also now had this, I'm just going to remove this order block, break of structure to the upside in terms of swing structure. So we need to see, based on our criteria, if there's any strong protected low within this new bullish leg. Okay, so what we look for is a previous strong low swept out. Okay, so break, low, never swept. Pullback, low, break, never swept. Pullback, break, no lows were swept. So therefore there's no strong low points within this structural range. So what we have to wait for is a new low to be swept for a new setup to be formed, or vice versa, that break to the downside, a sweep, and then a break to the downside to look for a new short opportunity. This here, you may see this as a sweep, okay? But this is a medium probability setup. Why? Because this was not a strong low, and this low didn't break any structure to the upside. So therefore, this is not a strong low sweep. It's just an internal range sweep of liquidity. Internally, this could be a protected low point because of the sweep and this internal break to the upside. Okay, so there's our key liquidity point. That was the sweep, our new strong internal strong protected low. But our swing strong protected low remains all the way down here still. But also keep in mind, because we were already in short positions, we wouldn't have taken any longs here. Purely because, well, we're not going to enter shorts and longs at the same time, because remember, also with the prop firm rules, we need to manage our drawdown. And because if we have 4 positions, it could get very close to that, and it's just unnecessary over leverage and over risk. So therefore we focus on one setup as a time. I never take a setup within a setup on one singular pair, because it's just too risky and it's unnecessary in terms of your risk management. So therefore, since the setup is already played out, we're going to move on from it. And therefore, I'm just going to remove this and rather wait for something brand new to print and form. Okay, so let's fast forward price and see what else develops. Okay, no protected low. We didn't sweep any previous low liquidity. Okay, keep going, keep going, keep going. Still a sweep. So actually here, what we had here was this break to the upside, okay? And then this break to the downside. So here we swept strong high liquidity and we broke structure to the downside, okay? Because this low point swept out the high and then broke structure to the downside. So what we can do here is we can look to go for a short position here because we have swept a high or low, a strong high or low. Okay, this strong high that broke structure to the upside, swept it, and then broke structure to the downside. So this does become a new structural range that is valid that we can work with. We've had our break. We've had our sweep of liquidity. Do we have an order block? Well, we do have this valid wick zone. Okay, we do have liquidity forming here as well. So we can title this as liquidity plus. So we do have all 6 criteria for the setup. We have an order block above the 702 fib. We do have volume in the leg as well. Here's valid volume. So yes, all our criteria are together. Okay, the break of structure was with a body break. So therefore we can go ahead and set our limits on the 702 to risk to reward. As well as, since our order block is exactly on the 702, we can go ahead and place 2 positions here. Okay, so let's see what we get. This wick zone, we can refine to the 50% if you want to get that tighter risk to reward and make sure it's above the fib level. So that is valid at the 50%. Okay, so let's quickly go and remove those limits. I don't know which one's which here, and just replace them. And this is a valid setup. Okay, so all our criteria is in place. Let's see what happens. Okay, we've tagged into the order block and our 702 limit. Let's see what happens. And we're immediately out as well. Okay, so good probability setup. We had a sweep of a strong high and then a break of structure to the downside. We had our boss, our order block, volume and balance, 702 fib in place. We had nice liquidity plus, which we swept, and it wasn't a middle of nowhere reversal because this low, we didn't have a pullback and then a break to the downside, which was a middle of nowhere reversal. So this was 100% good probability setup. So here we can make a note, a win. This was plus 2RR slash 2% on the OB and plus 2RR slash 2% on the fib. Okay, so we can leave that note there. So beautiful, TP on both. And because we've had a really good streak on this pair already, I think we've had 1 win, 2 wins. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins and 1, 2 losses. Okay, because we lost 2 fibs and all of the order blocks have been wins so far. So that's 9 wins, 2 losses. Because we're nicely up on this pair, you know, we can attempt to do these setups. And the thing is, this was a valid setup because our criteria met. So let's see what else happens here. I'm going to remove, or I'm just going to put this nice and thin here so we don't lose it. We can just recap it at the end of the session. And I'm going to remove the fib and all my previous markings just to keep it clean. So let's see what happens, because now we have had a sweep of this internal liquidity as well. So this is an internal setup, not a swing setup. But let's see what happens if we build up liquidity plus. Okay, so this as well. This was a new break to the downside. But guys, what do we call this? Yes, we had the sweep in the break. What do we call this? Should know. Middle of nowhere reversal. So what does that mean? This means this is going to become liquidity for the swing setup. Okay, so yeah, if you want to look for valid criteria in here, half risk this. This is not good probability because we know this is a middle of nowhere reversal. Okay, so let's see if we still get that pullback. Okay, there we go. So now we can go from this high to this low. Okay, we have valid liquidity plus, and have a look perfectly how we swept that middle of nowhere reversal. Beautiful liquidity. Also strong high liquidity that we're sweeping into our fib area. So here we can place our fib to our 1%, our order block position, which is this an equilibrium zone? Yeah, because it's below the fib, we can refine this to the 50%, such as so. We can place our next limit here. Okay, to risk to reward, 1% risk. Okay, so let's see if we get tagged in. Okay, so we've been tagged into the fib and into our 50% of our order block. Immediate reaction. Okay, so we've already, okay, not yet. Let's see if we can hit TP on the order block. Okay, beautiful guys. TP on the order block. So therefore, no matter what happens here, we've booked guaranteed profit. Okay. Awesome. And we are out on the fib position. Okay. So really good scenario, and something that new that you've learned today to increase the win rate of your higher time frame model is middle of nowhere reversals automatically become lower probability setups and liquidity plus for the swing setups. Okay, so that's why this setup here didn't run, because we use this high as liquidity for the swing setup, which we know with our criteria and what you've learned today, and why we rather use this as liquidity for the swing setup. So again, here we can put this to the side, just nice and small, and we can label this as, I'm just going to remove the setup as a win. And when you start to catch the rhythm of this, you're going to be fucking unstoppable in the markets, because this model is proven, and the data collection is absolutely beautiful, and the live results have been absolutely beautiful. 3 months have already passed by. January, February, March, we're already up 18%. But remember, this is only one pair. We're watching over 10 pairs in total. So that is why you're going to be getting setups every single week. We don't need the noise of the lower time frame. And this is, hopefully you're seeing why now I've moved to the higher time frame, because it's absolutely unstoppable. Okay, so what do we do here? Fib from the high to the low? Well, let's just wait for our pullback. Okay, liquidity building, pullback phase. Okay, so here, what do we have? Pullback, middle of nowhere reversal. Even though the swept liquidity, we have a supply zone, all the criteria meet in here. But we know that this now becomes middle of nowhere reversal, in brackets, liquidity plus for the extreme setup. Okay, so what can we start to do here? We can drag our fib, see if we get that pullback. Okay, nothing yet. Okay, so if we follow this through, we're moving down and down and down. No protected high point has been formed. Again, no highs swept previous strong highs. All right, break, pullback, there was no sweep. Pullback, break, there was no sweep. Pullback, break, there was no sweep. Pullback, break, no sweep. So therefore, there's no protected highs and other setups within these newly formed legs. So therefore, we just keep letting price play out until our criteria comes together. Okay, so there's a sweep of that high. So one of two things can happen here. We could get maybe the break to the downside, we'll have a new setup form here. Or we could run to our extreme setup and run from there and look to get in on our good probability swing setup. Okay, so here we have liquidity plus in the leg. We can drag our fib. To risk to reward, 1%. Our refined order block. Our refined order block here, which we can refine to the 50%. Set our second limit. And let's see what happens. Okay, look, no reaction of that supply. We're most likely going to sweep that high. There's the sweep. Okay, tagged in the fib position, and we're out of the fib position. Beautiful. Absolutely stunning. So here, we didn't get to our refined order block, but we still booked 2 risk to reward on our fib position. So here we can label this win to our fib. OB was a miss. Okay, absolutely beautiful, guys. And that's where these criteria is absolutely bulletproof. It's unstoppable. And that's why these backtesting videos are just as important as the course video for this higher time frame model, because you're going to learn new things. This middle of nowhere reversal setup, those are the setups that is going to decrease our win rate, where we're going to take unnecessary losses. But once we eliminate that and understand they are liquidity for the extreme, this then becomes much higher probability. And look, step ladder shit. Absolutely beautiful. With the liquidity criteria, SND, that we all teach, our strong highs, that we teach inside of the core course content, all put together in a simple mechanical model. So hopefully you've seen, and you will have seen over the years here at MM Funded, how we take everything that we teach, build it into a mechanical criteria plan to develop a profitable trading model. And that's ultimately what we are about here. But continuing with this, let's see if we get a new break. Beautiful, there's our break. So now we've had a sweep of our previous strong high liquidity and internal high liquidity with our new break of structure. Okay, so let's follow through price and see what we get if we get that pullback. Okay, price moving quite far. New middle of nowhere reversal, liquidity building up. Okay, our break of structure to the upside. So what can we do? We can draw this fib. Let's see what we get. Okay, but what did we have here on this internal setup? We had a swing low point broken to the downside, a swing low point broken to the upside. So what do we look for? We can look for if the strong low swept previous low liquidity. Well, here was our break, our pullback. Okay, so this became then a new swing low, which we then swept to the downside. We didn't break structure. That's the key here. We swept and broke structure to the upside. So therefore, this is a valid setup to ride this reversal counter trend. Okay, we have our valid order block, wick zone that started the volume. We have our Fibonacci, so we're ready to place our limits. 2 risk to reward. And then refined entry on our order block. Okay, we do also have liquidity in the leg, relative, equal lows. So this was a pullback and a break. So this is a strong protected low liquidity. So we do have liquidity plus in the leg as well, because this was a middle of nowhere reversal. So let's see. Okay, we're in the order block. Come on. Why are you freezing up on me? There we go. Beautiful. and we're now out of that order block position. So 2% booked on the order block. So really from here, it doesn't matter what happens because we're coming away with booked and guaranteed profit. Okay, still in, and we're out. Absolutely beautiful, guys. So do you see, using your criteria, how we can still run reversal and counter trend trades as well? It's 100% valid, but we stick to our criteria. Okay, we had a strong break of structure to the upside created by a new strong low. That strong low swept previous low liquidity. Okay, this was in the middle of nowhere. Well, this was a middle of nowhere reversal. Well, no, it wasn't. We swept liquidity, then broke to the upside. So this was a sweep, strong low, check. Break of structure. We had a valid order block. Volume created here in the leg. Fib in place, liquidity plus created, which was middle of nowhere liquidity. So even though we had this sweep, we don't take the setup because that's middle of nowhere reversal, which we then use as liquidity for our extreme setup. So I'm just going to copy and paste. Where's that previous year? So win both on the order block and the fib. Okay, stunning. So what we can do is just clean this up. I'm going to put this here and this here as well. We'll leave that there as is. Okay, so now see what happens. Pull back. Okay, so we can get ready to place our limits. Let's just see what happens in here. Okay, also again, middle of nowhere reversal. So what do we know? Liquidity plus forming. MNR, liquidity plus for our swing setup. Okay, so if we look through here, just for internal structure, because we have our swing, our internal, we can follow our same criteria. So here, this low didn't sweep anything. Okay, new break, pull back, break to the upside. This low wasn't swept. Okay, we had the sweep here, but the sweep didn't create a break of structure, so invalid low. We now had a new break of structure to the downside. So what do we know? This is a middle of nowhere reversal. It's liquidity for the swing setup. So even though we had a sweep to the upside of a swing high and then a break to the downside, okay, strong high, is it valid to do this? Wait for this pullback to go short. Yes, it is, but we know that it's lower probability. I don't like to trade these middle of nowhere reversals. That's why it's a part of my criteria and also a part of what you've learned today. So let's let this play out and see what happens, because we could sweep these lows, then break to the upside. Okay. Boom. What happened there? Okay, so maybe if you got in this wick zone, see if we would have gotten 2R. Okay, just for the purpose of research, stop at that 1. You see, we wouldn't have hit 2R. So therefore, this would have been a -2. But because we know it's a middle of nowhere reversal setup, it becomes liquidity for the extreme. So now we're at our extreme, we can set our limits. Okay, that's already tapped, but let's see. I'm sure price will just wick us in again. 2R. Let me drag this across. There we go. 1% risk. Our refined order block, which can actually be that wick zone. Stop at that high to risk to reward. Let's go ahead and see. Okay, there we go. Now we've been tagged in. And we're in and out. Yeah, we're in and out. Beautiful. There's our first proper loss of this backtesting session. And like I said, guys, they're going to come. It's a part of how trading works. We can never win every trade, but we know that our wins and losses come in the form of random distribution. So here we can type here and document this. Loss. -1 RR / -1% and -1 RR / -1% for the OB and for the fib. Okay, so let's have a look, see what has happened. I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to remove all of this old data. Let's just quickly duplicate this. I see this is not copied. There we go. Okay, so now we've had this swing break of structure to the upside, but we can work with our internal and identify our strong protected lows. Okay, so what we want to see is just a sweep of the low and a break of the high. So here we had a break, this strong low that then swept, and then a break of structure to the upside. So most recently, internally, this is our current setup. Okay, because here we had a break, pullback, break, this low didn't sweep and then break structure to the upside. So that's not a strong protected low in terms of our criteria. So therefore, this is the most recent setup that is currently valid. But if something new forms, such as a new low, a sweep, and then a break, it's valid to get involved on longs. So let's see what develops. Okay, pullback phase, nothing here. And why, some of you might say, Jay, maybe there's a short setup in here. Why? Is because this high didn't sweep any liquidity before breaking. It was just a sharp reversal. So therefore we know this high becomes future liquidity. If you remember the liquidity video in the bootcamp, high resistance and low resistance liquidity, this is low resistance liquidity because it was just a sharp reversal. There was no sweep and then reversal, meaning there was no institutional involvement here. Hence why we didn't look for short setups here. Okay, we don't look at old highs and lows. This is a break of structure. We're looking at what price is doing now. Okay, so what we want to see is just a sweep of a low and then a break of structure to the upside. So let's see. Here we had an internal break, our current internal strong high. So let's keep playing price and see what happens. Okay, new break, new strong high, and break of structure to the upside. Okay, so let's see what happens. Sweep at that high. So now, if we get a break to the downside, we could potentially see a valid short setup because we've swept strong high liquidity. So let's see what happens. There's our break. Okay, so potentially we have a valid short setup in here. But we check off our criteria. Let's wait for the pullback phase. Okay, so we've had a sweep of strong high liquidity. We've had a break of structure to the downside. Let's check off the rest. Order block. We do have this order block here. However, do we have imbalance? We do have volume in the leg. So yes, valid. So what we can do is, because this is a 50% refined zone, we can mark that off at the 50%. Okay, so we can set our limits. Stop at that high. To risk to reward. Okay, liquidity plus in the leg as well, because here we had pullback, middle of nowhere reversal, and entry on the fib. To risk to reward. And let's see what price does. Okay, more liquidity. Okay, so there we had a sweep of liquidity tagged into our refined order block and our 702 and TP. Okay, so TP on the order block. So whatever happens here doesn't matter, because if we run to full TP, great, 4R. If we don't, we come away with book profits anyway. Our risk is protected. So let's see. And stopped out on the 702 position. 100% fine. So what we can do here is, I'm going to copy one of those other scenarios here. We can go win plus 2R on OB, fib minus 1RR slash minus 1%. Okay, so risk protected, we still come away with a win. So we can leave this labeled here. And now we've had a new break to the upside in terms of swing. So here we had a swing set up, not a sweep, a boss. And we did also sweep, swing, low liquidity. That's our sweep. So let's wait for our pullback from the low to the high. So here we have our fib entry. We do have liquidity plus. We do have volume. Okay, so stop at the 1%. Risk and our order block. We have a valid zone here, and we also have an extreme wick zone down here. So in this scenario, we can take the recent because of our rules. Our recent does have liquidity. If we refine it to the 50%, it is a valid EQ zone. So there we go, valid liquidity. And let's have a look, see here. 2R. Perfect. Okay, so let's see what builds up. More liquidity. More liquidity. Okay, so we tagged in. But also, here, guys, and this is the one rule as well that I have mentioned in the course. You can put it as an 8 criteria. If news set BE. Okay, because here was NFP. This is NFP Friday. This is the NFP move that's kicking in. Okay, so what we do here is, because there is high impact news, and I have mentioned this in the course as well, and in the PDF as well, is what we do is we set break even. Okay, so because this buy limit hasn't executed yet, yeah, this one is just at break even. We remove limits and we set break even on anything that we add, because we treat this as if we were live trading. Okay, so break even on that. And there was NFP. That was NFP's move. Break a structure to the downside. So that's why this would have been a BE, because we literally opened our position as NFP hit price. So therefore this was just a standard BE trade. Okay, that's the only scenario we set break even, is if we're executing just before high impact news, or if we're already in a position and high impact news is about to hit. So what I will do is, when I take these types of trades, if there's news coming, I will tell you to set break even on that particular position that we are in. Okay, so let's see what we get. A pullback, new strong high. Did this break structure to the downside? Yes, we did. So this is strong high, sweep, break a structure to the upside. So now we've swept a strong high. So what we're going to see is either a break to the downside or that break to the upside. So let's see what we get. Okay, in terms of the swing setup, also valid. But yeah, that was a miss. I know that because I actually took this in, I had limits here in live time. So I know exactly what price did here. But yeah, in terms of the swing setup, okay, volume, refined candle, we swept a strong high and broke structure to the downside. So this was a valid short setup, but now this became a middle of nowhere reversal. So here we then had this break to the downside. Okay, so let's see what we get. New pullback. Okay. Middle of nowhere reversal. So what does this become? Liquidity for the setup now. So in this scenario, we have middle of nowhere reversal liquidity for the extreme and middle of nowhere reversal liquidity for the internal. So that makes this internal setup valid as well. But at this point in time is also where I took a lot of setup. So it's going to be a bit unfair to the backtest here, because I know exactly what price did. In terms of here as well, there was a long opportunity. So what we're waiting for is this break to the upside. If we could sweep the swing strong low and then print a bullish setup, that would be valid because we swept a strong low liquidity. So let's have a look. There was that sweep. We swept that strong low. We didn't break structure. So internally, we need to shift bullish. Yeah. So that was that. fib from this low to high was a valid counter trend reversal setup. Okay, so here we have limits on the 702, and also within here the only order block that there was this wick zone. Yeah, so this was the other valid 2R position. Okay, half risk because there's no liquidity. Well, there is liquidity for the order block. So yes, this is actually a normal risk position. We have all 6 criteria. And remember, this is not a middle of nowhere reversal because we swept a strong low. And we've now broken internally to the upside. Yeah, and that was a miss. And that ran without us. So that's fine. Miss trade. Miss. Then the swing setup that I took was this low. There we go, our new low. Over here. Because we have middle of nowhere reversal liquidity for the internal, it's 100% valid. Okay, so this was 1% risk, and our refine candle was all the way up here at 50% refinement here. So this then becomes also our refined order block entry. And to risk to reward, there we go. Okay, so let's go through. In. Okay, so this, I know in live time, as I said, guys, I know what happened here because I have traded this time of price live. This is now the middle of this year. This did wick through. I don't know why FX Replay didn't close this, but this order block position was a TP. So what I'm going to do for the purpose of the back testing, because I know how this played out in live, is we'll just set break even on that. Which position is this? This is the 199334. Yeah, there. We'll just set break even on that because in live time this was not a loss. But yeah, FX Replay should have closed that as we went past our 2R point. And then yeah, from there we took a -2 on the fib position. So yeah, this is where sometimes with FX Replay you just have to adjust and record everything because there might be mistakes or accidental misrecord. So this was a win because it was 2RR slash 2% on the OB, and a fib was the loss. So this was a 1% gain. So on this results, we're missing 2% because of that previous position we had. Where was that now? I can't remember where that was, but we had another. I remember. I'll just have to rewatch the video, but it was somewhere. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, that was that result. So this was a yeah, that was the entry there. And on the short position, it wicked me through, but on FX Replay now, it didn't close. And in live time, it did close me as well. So that's why that's a misrecord. So we'll just leave that here. Okay, and we follow through. We're just looking for now new structural lows and highs. And then there was something very similar with the setup as well. We had a pullback, break, pullback, strong low created, which then swept to the downside and then broke to the upside. So this was a valid setup that I took as well. Right here, I'll tell you now why we're not going to take this. Because at this point in time, there was high impact news. So we entered the fib and the refined order block here and here. but there was red, I think it was CPI this week, which we were in, and then the news came out. It was on the 24th, around here. Yeah, you'll see here now. Tuesday. Yes, it was Tuesday, CPI. So on this Tuesday, we set break even. I think it was at this point somewhere here on this wick as Tuesday came into, or it was Tuesday. This was the CPI, or the news move that hit on this day. There was red impact news, and we set break even. We were just above entry, and we set break even on these entries, hence why I'm not going to backtest that, because like I said, from here on, I know exactly what happens. I know exactly how I traded it, but we're still going to apply the rules as if it was a backtesting session. So that would have been a break even because of the news. And that's where that we're not going to record a part of our backtesting session, because I also didn't take or record that as a loss in my live trading on my accounts as well, because of the news that day. So this region as well, we had then this internal break to the downside, and as well here, middle of nowhere reversal, this strong high that was also created after a sweep. This middle of nowhere reversal, and then we just continued to print more setups. So this was also within this range here. It actually ran, but we didn't enter that because it was a middle of nowhere reversal for the swing. We then had this break to the downside, and then the swing setup, which we entered here. The refined candle was this candle here. Okay, but also on this day, it was NFP for August. So we did not take any trades this day. This was the NFP candle on Friday, 2nd of August. So therefore, we didn't enter anything here, high impact news. We just let this play out, which we then broke structure to the upside. Okay, so yeah, the two entries that happened here was really just this one. I didn't take this in live time because for me this was nowhere, middle of nowhere reversal liquidity for the extreme, but when the extreme played out, there was NFP. So that was why we didn't take those two. Okay, criteria number 8, if news set BE or remove limits. That's the last 8th criteria. And then from here, again, just waiting for new setup. So there's that pullback. Okay, there was a sweep of that liquidity, that strong low. And we then broke structure to the upside. So this was then the new setup that printed. Sweep of a strong low, break of structure to the upside. We waited for this pullback, but I know here we had a miss. So this was the setup on the fib. And this weak zone here. And this ran without us. So that new break to the upside. Then over here as well, we didn't sweep any liquidity. We didn't sweep any previous internal low or strong low. So therefore there was no new range. So we had to wait for a new range to form. Which over here we had, I remember the setup in time. We had a sweep of this pullback, this break, then we had the sweep of these lows, strong low liquidity, then a break to the upside. And at this point in time, we did our fib from this low to high. All the criteria were met, so we'll execute this as I traded it live. We had our fib entry. Ooh. To risk to reward. This was a half risk because there was no liquidity that built up for the setup. Then for the refined OB was this wick zone refined to the 50%. 2R. And that's how that played out. We got stopped out for a half risk on that. We just got swept out and then continued long. Okay, but why we took half risk, there was no liquidity on the left and no liquidity on the right. It was just a sharp break, pullback. So then what happened after this setup was we had this break to the downside here. Yeah, so then from what happened here was we had this sweep of this strong low, this break to the upside. We had this wick zone here as well. This was also a setup that I took live from this strong low to high. We had entry on the fib, and I took 1% risk, normal risk here, because we had quite nice liquidity, middle of nowhere reversal. This was the fib, that was a loss, and then this was the 50% wick zone that we refine at 50%. And then this was a 2R. This just wicked 2R, so we took away 1% on this position. There. That was that trade. So this is, well, I didn't enter this now. I went a bit quick. But this would have been, we can include this in the results because I did take this live. The OB, or win, OB plus 2RR slash 2% OB, and then loss or minus 1RR slash 1% on the fib. That was that trade. So yeah, we'll come back through this and add this to the results, but that was a 1% gain. Then what we had on EU was this break to the downside of this valid strong low. And the strong high did sweep internal liquidity as well. So this boss became a sweep. We also did have this little sweep here. So the high was created after a sweep. And this is what happened, or what played out here. So new break. We know that there is a pullback and a break, middle of nowhere reversal. Okay, there's that. The pullback, break. This is all just liquidity plus. So this is M, middle of nowhere reversal, LQ plus. This break and pullback, new break, middle of nowhere reversal. Then we waited for this pullback here. And this was the last, I think, or there could have been one more, but this was the last recent setup on EU. At the strong high, 2 risk to reward, 1% risk, and the refined order block was this candle here, where we set another 2R position. And this is how this played out. We were in and out of the fib. So that was just a plus 2R. So this we can duplicate and save here as win plus 2R fib. OB was a miss. OB miss. So that was a plus 2% gain on that position. That we can remove, and this we can leave just like that. Yeah, so that's how that played out. Then over here as well, we had a new, I think we did, yeah, that new break of structure to the downside. Let's just make sure all of this is recorded. This break. Where we swept the previous internal liquidity and the strong high, middle of nowhere reversal liquidity. But this day as well, there was news. Yeah, so this position here, we NFP hit at this time here. So we already just got tagged in, but what we did do was we set break even when NFP hit at about 2:30. So slightly into this candle, we had break even set according to our rules, but we never got tapped out, we ran. Okay, so that's the only scenario we set BE, is if we've been tagged in already and then news hits, we set break even. Or if news is about to hit, so this was still early in the morning at about 9 o'clock. I set limits. I still had my limits because this was a really A+ setup. So I was willing to try it. Also, I'm really nicely up on EU, so I didn't mind taking the loss. But yeah, when news did hit about 4 hours after into the position, we did say break even. Then over here as well, we had this setup forming, but the thing is, we didn't have any order block. This was all, there was no volume, or there was volume, but there was no order block above the 702. But what we did have, I did see this was this sweep of that low, then this break to the upside, which we never ran. We ran without us. Okay, so these lows did not sweep anything. We then had this sweep here. Strong low swept, breaker structure to the upside. So this is now a continuation. This setup is now no longer valid. Yes, and then from here we went from fib low to high. This was a half risk position because there was no liquidity. All the criteria met. We had the sweep, we had the volume, we had the order block, which was this beautiful wick zone here, but we just were missing liquidity. So this was also the 2R here for half risk, and then this was the 2R here for also half risk. Yeah, so here we had to adjust that fib. We were in the fib and the order block, or the fib position ran. That was also a +2. And then remove limits of the refined order block because that was a miss. So therefore this as well was, this I think was the latest setup on EU if I'm not mistaken. Fib OB miss as well. Let's just see if we come to the end of the backtest. Yeah, this was not valid because we didn't sweep any strong low, so there was no longs here. This was, shorts weren't valid because we didn't break any structure. Yes, and this is where EU is now. So we then had, this is I think the current setup we're busy with. We had this high sweep, this internal high sweep here as well, and we also swept liquidity here. And EU now stay here. We're waiting for this pullback into this trade plan here. This is our current trade plan. Okay, so that's where we are today. If we come back to our analytics, let's come back to our dashboard. I'm just going to make this edit. No, analytics. This was the session here. So 64% win rate. But remember that includes the losses on the when we take a 2R but a -1 on the fib. That actually is a win, but it includes those losses as losses. So about a 65% win rate, 28 trades, 18 wins. So very solid, bulletproof model that has proven very nicely on EU. So with that being said, we'll move on to our next backtesting session on a different pair, and we'll go through all of the pairs as we go along. So in reality, this was about a 26K return, 26% return in the period of 8 months. But remember, that's on one pair. This is not a realistic expectation of what you're going to get on your account because you're trading multiple pairs. With that being said, guys, we'll see you in the next backtesting session.